Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Barry Allen joins me today as we get closer to the last three games for every team of SEC play. I say the last weekend, or I was going to say the last weekend, but of course, the last series always Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So as we prepare for that, Barry, we're coming down the stretch. We had some interesting midweek games. On Tuesday night, we've got a Player of the Year and a Pitcher of the Year discussion coming later today. Let's start, though, with last night. I guess the outcomes around the league, not what you hope, because I think Georgia and LSU were the two teams that we were really watching. We really wanted to see them, for the sake of the league, pick up a couple of midweek wins, and neither were able to deliver.
Yeah, and Georgia's just in a funk right now. They're now 3-8 in their last 11 games, not playing the way you would want a team to play, one, heading into the postseason, and two, trying to get into tournament. I mean, just be honest with you. It's not a good look for Georgia right now, and a tough loss last night to Tech. Not a terrible loss, but a tough loss, where they led 2-1, 3-1, then it's 3-3, then they led 6-3, and then it's 6-6, and then they just couldn't outlast Tech in 14 innings. I mean, Georgia walked 15 batters in the game last night, very uncharacteristic of Georgia, and left a ton of guys on base. I think both teams left 34, 35 runners on base, but just more to me, I mean, the one thing I took for it is I thought Gowan at the start was pretty good, and that would give Georgia a little hope in the SEC tournament next week if they're looking for a Tuesday guy. I think he struck out 6 in 3 innings. And the bullpen, which has been pretty good, just after you get to a point in all those innings last night, it just kind of got away from them. They walked a lot of people, and, Tech had chances to win the game in several different innings, and, they couldn't do it either. And they burned a lot of their arms, but for a Georgia team, that's who we're primarily concentrating on and worried about as SEC teams. But for a Georgia team that's trying to get in the NCAA tournament, that's probably not a good look for them last night, losing on the road at Tech and going 0-2 against Tech this year. And, probably a real disappointing loss going into a crucial home series with Ole Miss, and not avoiding your LSU. But then, speaking of Ole Miss, they dropped one at home last night to UT Martin, and they're looking at trying to get in a regional and host a regional. They're in, but to host a regional, and probably not a good look on the last Tuesday night of the year to lose to Tennessee Martin. So now you got Ole Miss coming off a bad week, Tuesday loss, taking on Georgia, who's just had a bunch of bad losses here lately, in a real crucial series this weekend in Athens. And then LSU just got caught flat-footed last night. They're down 6-0. I mean, it's, the demons of Northwestern State, and they're in a little different situation, than LSU. Obviously, they got to win their league. They're not getting in if they don't, but their league plays 4 conference games, and they pushed up and start Thursday this week like everybody else does. So they're pitching guys on Tuesday night trying to beat LSU, knowing they've got Texas A&M Corpus Christi waiting on them Thursday, and a doubleheader Friday, and then a single game on Saturday, because the Southland plays 4-game series during this COVID goofy year that we have. So they came out in a little better shape winning last night. Good win for Northwestern State, a bad loss for LSU. And I'll give props to Northwestern State head coach Bobby Barbier, who spent some time on the Alabama staff with Mitch Gaspard and played at Northwestern State, played for Mitch there, and is a real good, solid person and a good young up-and-coming head coach. They've been to a regional since he's been there. Actually played in the same regional at Oregon State with LSU a few years ago. So those 3 games last night, tough losses for the league. And, of course, Missouri losing at home to Kansas, another loss for them. You thought they might have some momentum after winning against Mississippi State. So here goes Missouri up and down again, as they get ready for their big home series with Auburn this weekend. But, good for Vanderbilt. They had a good win last night. I know they had a tough loss to a player, and you can expand on that because you were there. And South Carolina got a midweek shutout you know, oh, his name just escapes me. Tennessee guy hit 2 homers and drove in 6 runs last night. I think it was Rucker.
Jake Rucker, yeah.
Yeah, I had to go look at the box. His name, the guy that did it, it just went away from me. He had a big night. Auburn beat, UNA. Everybody beats UNA. They have the worst run differential in college baseball. But some good points last night. Jordan Beck, 2 homers, 6 RBI. My apologies to Jordan and forgetting, just going brain dead on his name for a moment. But he had a huge game for Tennessee last night and got the Vols their 40th win. So, some good and some bad last night as we head towards the final 21 games of the season. That kind of hit me last night too, to go, wow, there's 21 games left. That's it. And so you saw the Vanderbilt game, and they had a scary moment last night there with their shortstop. Maybe you can enlighten us a little bit on what's going on there and what his status might be for not only this weekend but for the rest of the year, if you know anything.
Yeah, Vanderbilt's injury last night was to Carter Young, who is its shortstop and its leading home run hitter and just a phenomenal defender. He's a kid who almost never comes off the field. Like, even they're winning a dozen runs, and Carter Young, they're going to roll him out for the ninth. That's just what they think of him. But last night he is trying to steal a base in the first inning, gets gunned down. I looked down just briefly to score the play in my book, and I hear kind of this gasp, and I look up, and he is just writhing in pain. Apparently he had hurt his left shoulder as he grabbed the bag sliding in. Of course, we're all thinking the worst, dislocation, tore something, whatever. And he was in some pain. The intel I was getting coming out of last night is it wasn't nearly as bad as it looked. And Tim Corbin said last night after the game that he wasn't in any kind of pain. He was in the dugout in a sling. In fact, he even went out with the team, to do their stretching and stuff in left field between innings. And he wasn't participating in that, but he was kind of out there walking around, which I think points a little bit to mood. I think if you're having a bad injury, you might just want to be alone by yourself with your thoughts for a while. But he was out and about, and from what I hear, it's nothing serious. Sounds like maybe even a non-injury. So we will see what happens going forward. I presume there will be some tests today. I don't know if they'll talk about that in their media call or not. But to me, from what I know, sitting here doing this on Wednesday morning, if Carter Young misses some time for Vanderbilt, it's probably precautionary. I would expect it to be a lot. So I think that left that brightens the outlook around, because I think everybody at the Bark last night was thinking the worst. And the crazy thing, Barry, you see something like that happen. A lot of times that sucks the life out of a team. Vanderbilt the next inning scores 13 runs against FIU. And I don't know, you may know this, I don't know that anybody's had a bigger offensive inning in the SEC this year than that.
Yeah, that was a pretty big inning. I was going to go look it up before we got on the call this morning, but I had a few other little issues to deal with here this morning. I don't know that a team has scored a ton of runs. I know Ole Miss had a 10-run inning this weekend. I know they've had some big innings in games against Auburn and Arkansas against Ole Miss. So I was going to try to go back and look up, just SEC games and see how many 10-run innings, that we have had. And I was looking at your text from last night. We've traded a bunch of texts since then, but you sent me and said Carter Young just left the game with a shoulder injury and it looked bad. And then I replied, dang, really bad. And then you sit back and said, well, Vandy just scored 13 runs in the second inning. And I said, well, at least it didn't hurt his team anyway.
Right.
So they were able to bounce back and have a big inning and, put the game away against FIU, last night. So good that it doesn't sound bad for him. And hopefully if he misses a game, like you said, it'd be just for precaution. They need him. He's a real fire plug for them. And, somebody that can help them, win not only in Hoover, but, throughout the NCAA tournament. So if it's just a little banged up shoulder and he can play with it for a couple of days and then maybe rest him in the tournament a couple of times, then that would be a good thing for Vanderbilt. We hope for the best for him because he's a tremendous player.
Well, anytime you get a 13-run inning, there are some odd things in there. First of all, there's only one home run in there. That was by Spencer Jones. You would have thought maybe there were 2 or 3, but they got 10 straight runners on base with 2 outs, which you don't see that happen much. I think maybe 12 of the 13 came with 2 outs. And I rewound the inning because the play started with the play where Parker Nolan just beats out an infield single at first to the point where they reviewed it. The call on the field was upheld, but let's say he's a step slow in getting there. I've looked back at my scorebook from that, and if he doesn't reach base, Vanderbilt probably gets 1 run in that inning or maybe none based on the way it plays out. So just one of the oddities of baseball that it can take one little break to crack the door open for an inning or one thing that could have gone your way, and then all that doesn't happen. But that was just one of the more bizarre innings of baseball I've ever seen at any level.
And another odd thing that stood out for me last night from that game, 20 runs and 19 hits for Vanderbilt. And usually in a game like that, there's some poor sap that just takes it for the night. There's some guy in the lineup that's 0 for 6 with 2 double plays and 3 strikeouts, and he just can't do anything right. And that didn't happen last night. Now, there are a couple of 0 for 2s, but, I mean, they got in, they look like they're subs or, Cooper Davis went 0 for 2 as a sub. Matt Hogan went 0 for 2 as a pinch runner and a sub in center field, but there's not any 0 for 5s. I mean, Bradfield's 3 for 4 with 4 RBI. Parker Nolan's 3 for 4, 3 runs, 5 RBI. Spencer Jones, 2 for 3, 2 runs, 3 RBI. Gonzalez has a hit and an RBI and scored 2 runs. I mean, there's nobody in their lineup that's, took that, just took that beat down, because there's always one guy, when you go, hey, how'd y'all do last night? Oh, we won 25-1. Cool. How'd you do? Oh, I went 0 for 5. 0 for 5. Why? How'd you go? Well, I was the guy that got out all the time. They were glad to see me coming up. There's always that one guy, but there wasn't last night for Vanderbilt. So the balance up and down the lineup, that's another thing that makes this team really scary, is how good they are offensively, especially at the top. And then with, if Young and Keegan and Nolan, are hitting, this is a really good team. I think, Kolwick, hit a home run. He hit the only home run last night. Is that correct?
Jones hit one too.
Jones hit one as well.
Actually, Kolwick did not hit a home run. They got one at Alan Espinal. And this was the other odd thing about the game. Like, Vanderbilt started clearing the bench in about the 6th inning. And usually at this point of the year, you got kids that have been sent home or to summer ball. So they're rolling out like 4 or 5 guys. I'm like, I didn't know he was still on the roster. And putting those guys in, and they're hitting rockets. And the other thing that was interesting is that this was, I think, I don't know if Florida International maybe didn't qualify for the conference tournament. I think maybe not. I think this might have been their last game of the season. They were playing a weekend series at nearby Middle Tennessee State, and they actually pitched a guy who led them, I think, in weekend innings, who I think had pitched Thursday. He started. The kid was dealing at 95 out of the gate. Now, it may have been straight because it was getting hit. But and they pitched some other guys who threw a lot of weekend innings for them. So it wasn't necessarily the bottom of their staff. No, it's not a great staff. So those were 2 more things that were oddities. No, look, maybe if your season's over, if you're Florida International, you're ready to move on and get to the International House of Pancakes or somewhere else other than the baseball field. But those were just 2 other weird things about that game last night.
And the fact that FIU actually led 1-0 in the 2nd inning.
Yes, I'd almost forgotten that.
Your typical sports information director release, Vanderbilt scored a season high 20 runs in a 20-4 come from behind victory over Florida International last night at Hawkins Field.
Right.
And you're like, come from behind. Yeah, we trailed 1-0 in the 1st inning, and then we scored like 10,000 runs in the 2nd inning. But not one of those, it counts as a come from behind win, but it's not quite as impressive when you're down 5-0 and you win 7-5 as it is when you're down 1-0 and win 20-4. So, but anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of like when they used to award the game-winning RBI in baseball for every game, even if it was 17-1. They don't do that anymore. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of the weird things of baseball. Just when you look over and Vanderbilt's trailing 1-0 and kind of a meaningless midweek game, and where they're trying to get kids rested, and then the breath gets taken out of the ballpark. Because frankly, Carter Young, I don't know that he's their best player in the lineup. I'm not saying he's not. He may be, but I think he's the guy that they can least afford to lose. And you're going, man, they're down 1-0, and they just lost a guy in an injury that looks bad, and the air goes out of the park, and you're just thinking this could turn badly in a hurry. If you said one team's about to give up a 13th spot, I don't know that that's the team that I would have picked, but that's the way baseball goes. Barry, I want us to flip the conversation to Player of the Year convo in just a minute. But before I go there, I wanted to circle back to Georgia, because you mentioned that stretch they've been in. Now look, in that stretch of 11 games, they played Georgia Tech twice. They played Arkansas. They played Florida. So it's been brutal. The one path in there for Georgia to get something done, and this is before all the pitching injuries hit, was that series against Auburn at Foley Field, where Auburn took 2 or 3. That may be the one that Georgia looks back and just would really like to have a do-over on. Georgia 12-15, but worse than that, RPI last night drops, I think, from 39, if my memory's correct, to 42. LSU's, by the way, dropped from 18 to 22. So those are damaging losses for teams where I think the RPI is really going to come under a microscope as the committee looks at both those teams.
Yeah, and I think for Georgia, I think their only path now is they have to win. They have to win the series with Ole Miss, and they have to have a good showing in Hoover. I don't think anything less than that. And I think Georgia's season comes to an end next weekend in Hoover. I just don't see them with enough. I mean, they're a resilient team. They've got 7 walk-off wins, which leads the conference. But that Auburn series 2 weeks ago, I mean, they won the game Thursday night with really good pitching and the Gonzalez grand slam in the 7th inning to win 4-0. And Auburn gave them a bajillion chances to win on Friday night, and Georgia just refused. I mean, Auburn led 5 different times. Georgia answered every time. And then the last time, Auburn, they got to the 14th inning, and it was almost like Butch Thompson told his team, he goes, okay, I'm hungry. Let's get a bunch of runs and let's get them done. And they scored like 4 runs, and they won 10-6 in 14 innings. And Georgia did not come back, from the 5th time that they trailed. But Georgia had many chances, and then also didn't really show up Saturday until the end of the game. I mean, they're down, early in the finale, made a late charge. I mean, yeah, they've got the tying runs on base in the 9th inning, but didn't get the hit to get them in, and lost the series. And that was kind of the start for them. I think at one point they were 26-13 overall, and feeling pretty good about them. And now they're 29-21. So you're talking, like we said, 3-8 in their last 11 games. So not trending in the right direction for Georgia. And I think anything short of a series win over Ole Miss and a couple of wins in Hoover, I'm afraid this year the Dogs are going to get left out.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that too. And to that Ole Miss series, that's going to be one that's going to have a bad outcome for somebody, right? Because I think if Ole Miss loses that one, then all of a sudden, I don't know that Ole Miss is going to be hosting. If Georgia loses it, then I don't know that Georgia gets in the tournament, as you said. So now I guess the flip side of that is somebody's got a chance to improve their lot in life, because if Georgia goes to Ole Miss and wins 2, then all of a sudden it's 14-16. That probably, I'm going to guess, good enough to get Georgia in. The RPI will be in the 30s at that point. But for Ole Miss, again, I would think that Ole Miss would drop out of the hosting picture at that point. But I think one team is really going to come away with something that it's won in terms of a longer term thing. And one of these teams, I think, will have lost a lot.
Yeah, and I think last night doesn't really perplex me that much, just and Ole Miss losing at home to UT Martin, other than the fact that UT Martin's not a great team. But that happens sometimes. You look at Ole Miss, they go to Athens this weekend, as we've said. What if they sweep? And they're highly capable of doing this. This is a good team. So Ole Miss, let's play that pot stir again. I don't like to look into the future, or I guess I don't know what, I forget what the term is, but let's just stir the pot a little bit and say Ole Miss sweeps Georgia and they're 19-11. And Mississippi State, if they drop 2 at Alabama. I don't think they will, but we talked about that yesterday, and they're 18-12, and Florida loses 2 at Arkansas, which is highly possible. Tennessee loses their series. They go 19-11. Vanderbilt sweeps out. Ole Miss is top 4. And they don't play till Thursday.
Yeah.
They don't play till Thursday, or excuse me, Wednesday. They're top 4. And there's no way they won't host. And then they may all of a sudden top 4. They may all of a sudden be top 8. So it's a huge deal for Ole Miss this weekend. They got to win 2. But, they got to go. And I don't think you tell your team to get on the bus, hey, we're going to have sweep mentality. I mean, I don't think you tell them that, but I think they understand what's going on. But, Ole Miss goes to Georgia and wins 2 out of 3, sweeps. And if they sweep and other things happen in the right way for them, they're 4th in the league. And that's a lock to host to me, and be 2nd in the division. And they wouldn't have series wins, but they'd have a win over Arkansas and a win over State, a win over Florida, a series win over Vanderbilt, and they didn't play Tennessee, and they'd have a sweep over South Carolina. So you're talking about all those really good teams that are looking to host. Now all of a sudden they got quite a lot of wins against them, and they finished 4th in the league. And of course that would make Georgia 12-18 and would just almost eliminate them without even going to Hoover. But Georgia's got to win, and Ole Miss has got to win. So I guess you could say that the Ole Miss Georgia series at Foley Field starting Thursday night is an elimination series for somebody, either to be a host or either to get into the NCAA tournament. And I think when the weekend's over, I think we'll see that that's probably accurate.
Here's another crazy thing. If I'm looking at this right, Arkansas technically has not clinched a first-round bye, has it? 19-8, because I mean, let's say to use your term, let's pot stir rather than prognosticate, which I think this is going to be the same thing. Well, it's not prognosticating because I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this could happen. I mean, Arkansas could get swept by Florida, very unlikely, but the Hogs could be 19-11. Could get passed by Vanderbilt, could get passed by Tennessee, could get passed by Mississippi State, would be passed by Florida in that scenario. So, yeah, I mean, you talked yesterday. I think one of the favorite things you mentioned was how Florida could finish anywhere between 1st and 7th. I think the other favorite stat is that it's so close that the number 1 team in the country, by everybody's estimation, has not clinched a top 4 seed in its own tournament, if I've got this right.
I think that's accurate, but I think even if they were to win the division and not win the SEC, don't they still get one of the top seeds because they are a division winner? Do they not protect? Says the 2 division champions shall be automatically seeded number 1 and number 2.
That is correct, but here's the scenario. Mississippi State and Ole Miss could both be 20-10 with Arkansas being 19-11. So therefore, heck, Arkansas could still finish 3rd in the West for that, under that scenario.
Okay. Yeah, State could be 20-10. Ole Miss could be 19-11 and tie Arkansas. They would tie if Arkansas got swept and Ole Miss swept. Arkansas and Ole Miss would tie, and Arkansas would win the tiebreaker. So they would be second. They would be second in the West in that scenario. And I guess Tennessee could go 21-9, Vandy could go 20-9, and Arkansas or Florida could go 20-10. And at 19-11, yeah, Arkansas would finish second in the West, and they'd not play in that situation. They would not play on the first day. They would be
okay.
It'd be Tennessee. It'd be Tennessee 1, Mississippi State 2, Vanderbilt 3, Florida 4, and Arkansas would be 5, and Ole Miss would be 6. And if that were, so Arkansas could be 5th, yes.
Okay, let's try this on for size, just for fun. Florida sweeps Arkansas and Arkansas. It's not going to happen, but this tells you how close this thing is, right? Arkansas could get swept at home against Florida. Would make them 19-11. Vanderbilt could get swept at home by Kentucky. That would make Vanderbilt 17-12. South Carolina could sweep Tennessee in Columbia. That would make Tennessee 18-12. Mississippi State could, well, let's leave State out of it for now, okay? Florida does that, then Florida is a top 4 seed. South Carolina is a top 4 seed. Vanderbilt, I guess, would drop out of a top 4 seed. We mentioned that Arkansas could under the right scenario. And I'm trying to determine as we go through these, are there enough of the right teams matched up where this could happen? Ole Miss could sweep Georgia, as we mentioned. So I guess technically we could have in Mississippi State sweeps. We could have even, I guess, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Florida, and South Carolina is your top 4 teams. Is that right?
Well, I was trying to write all those records down as we were going along.
Has your head stopped spinning yet?
A little bit. If all of that happens, like you said it would, Florida and Mississippi State would be the division champions. And I guess they'd have to have some kind of a tie-breaking coin flip, something to determine, because they didn't play each other. Then I guess it'd go to the next teams in the league, and then you'd look at 19-11 is better than 18-12. So Arkansas and Ole Miss would be tied for 3rd, 2nd in the West, and 3rd overall. So I guess you could be – I don't think there's a way that South Carolina can get into the top 4. They'd be 18-12. Well, I guess they could if Mississippi State –
They'd have the tiebreaker with Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah, but
by that point, State would have won 20, Florida would have won 20, Arkansas would still have 19, so they'd be ahead of South Carolina.
And Ole Miss, and if Ole Miss swept Georgia, they would be 19.
Yeah.
And they would be ahead of South Carolina at 18.
Yeah.
But if Ole Miss won 2 and were 18-12 and tied with South Carolina, Ole Miss would win the tiebreaker, having won the series with South Carolina. So we might have to get a larger pencil and a bigger eraser and try to figure out if we're trying to go that deep and get South Carolina into the top 4. I'm not sure there is a path to get the Gamecocks into the top 4. But it's something we can play with the numbers and see, but just looking at it, if all of that shakes out, they would be 5, tied with Tennessee for 5th. And since they swept Tennessee this weekend, they would be 5th. Tennessee would be 6th, and your Commodores would be 7th in all that scenario if that happens. And we know that none of that's going to happen, but they are what we call mathematical possibilities. And as long as there is a mathematical possibility, I think there was a famous movie line one time saying, "So you're saying I have a chance?"
Yes.
It may not be a good chance, but you got a chance. And it's going to last about 2 seconds, and then it's going to be done. But in some crazy way, yes, there's a lot of teams that you're looking at and you're thinking are locked national seeds that could finish 5th, 6th, and 7th in this conference.
Yeah, 2 lessons here, right? The guy you might not want to be this weekend is Ben Beatty. Number one, because I guess he's the guy that's going to have to figure all this out for the press releases. And number 2, if I'm Ben Beatty, I'm silently very grateful that Vanderbilt and Alabama got rained out 2 weekends ago, because that removes Vanderbilt more than likely from a tiebreaker. Now, if a game is rained out somewhere or a couple games, then God help everybody, because that might bring a Vandy tie back into it. But Vanderbilt is the one team that should be easy to sort out if everybody plays, because it's going to have one fewer game, and the same with Alabama too.
Yeah, and I don't see any rain in the forecast this weekend for any of our 7 venues, so that's a good that's a good thing. I mean, they're talking 93 for the high here on Saturday for Mississippi State and Alabama. So it'll be a little warm, but it's going to be dry. So hopefully that won't be an issue. One thing I heard people say all the time is, why doesn't the SEC put like out all the scenarios? Well, you couldn't come up with all the scenarios. I mean, it would be pages and pages. And by the time you read 3 teams, you get to the 4th team, you'd be like, I don't even want to read this anymore. This is just, there's so many things that can happen, and trying to predict them all is just not even, it's just really crazy. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I guess it was 19, I guess that's the last time we had an SEC tournament. And the last weekend of the regular season, Kentucky, Alabama, and South Carolina were all tied for the last spot going into this last regular season series. And everybody in Tuscaloosa was talking about how all Alabama's got to do is do exactly what Kentucky and South Carolina do, and we're in the tournament. And I'm like, no, you're not. And they're like, well, we beat this team, we beat this team, we beat this team. And they didn't, and they didn't, and they didn't, and we'd have the better record. And I go, well, there's one thing you're forgetting. And then what's that? And I said, well, you're not counting the Georgia series. Oh. I said, so if you get swept by Georgia and Kentucky gets swept and South Carolina gets swept, you're still not going to be 12th because you're going to lose the tiebreaker with that. It couldn't make people understand this. And even the announcers that did the game for Georgia, they were there Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday. None of those games were on the network. They were all on the app. And even the Georgia announcer Thursday night was talking during the game. I think it was Matt Stewart, who keeps up with this and knows this stuff very well. He said, this is so confusing that I have asked 7 people in the SEC and in the schools. I mean, when I say SEC, I'm talking about SEC people, not all people in the league office, but just people who follow this. I was one of them. And he said, every one of them gave me a different answer.
Wow.
Said, I have no idea if Alabama's going to make the tournament or not. He said, I couldn't tell you. He said, I got a different answer. He said, Alabama says they need to win 1 game and they're in. Well, that wasn't true either, because if Kentucky won 1 and South Carolina won 1, they were still going to lose the tiebreaker. So that wasn't right. And I tried to help him with it. It was just so confusing. He said, you know what? He said, I don't even think I'm going to touch it till Saturday. And even on Saturday, it was still so confusing because guess what? They all 3 lost on Thursday and they all 3 lost on Friday. And it came down to the last game, South Carolina at Mississippi State, and South Carolina beat Mississippi State and got the 12th spot. And that eliminated any mass confusion of trying to break a 3-way tie for the last place team.
Well, and you're keeping up, but this goes back to the 80s. Do you ever remember a year where you didn't have anything determined at the bottom in terms of who made Hoover and who didn't, and you also had, nothing determined at the top either? I mean, there's not anybody that's clinched. Again, I don't think a berth into, or a bye, I guess is the way I'm trying to put it. I mean, it just seems like both ends of the spectrum, the possibilities are so wide ranging. I'm thinking this is probably pretty uncommon in your experience.
There's been a couple of years where things have been really weird. I'm trying to remember which year it was. There was a year that Mississippi State lost on Friday night with Saturday to go and clinched an SEC tournament spot, but still could finish 4th or 5th in the division. Something weird. Ole Miss and Arkansas were playing. Mississippi State was playing somebody, and they lost, but they clinched a spot in the tournament, but couldn't win the division, even though they still had the same record as some of the other teams. I remember one year Vanderbilt, Florida, and South Carolina. This might have been 2010. Vanderbilt, Florida, and South Carolina all entered the weekend 17-10, all tied for first in the East. And when the weekend ended, they were all 20-10, and all won the East and had to break the tie. And the East tri-champion was the 4 seed and the 3 seed in the tournament, because the West team automatically got the 2nd seed. So you had, and I don't remember how it shook out 1, 2, 3, 4, but you had the East champion at 1, the West champion was the 2 seed, and then the East tri-champion was 3 and the East tri-champion was 4. And it was funny watching the 4-seed game on the second day and the commissioner giving them a trophy for winning the league and going, well, you're the 4th seed. Well, they tied. That's where it ended up. So, I mean, there have been some crazy moments like that, but it's been a while that it's been this top heavy crazy and then bottom heavy crazy. And unfortunately, the teams in the middle, kind of getting left out a little bit. And really there's only 3 in the middle. I mean, Kentucky's in the tournament or not in the tournament yet, or they are, aren't they? Kentucky's clinched.
Kentucky has, let's see.
Kentucky has clinched. LSU has not, even though LSU is higher than Kentucky in the standings. There's another weird one. Kentucky is 11th. LSU is 10th because LSU won the series with Kentucky. But Kentucky's in the tournament and LSU is not yet.
Okay. Yeah. Auburn and A&M could both catch Kentucky in terms of wins. But yes. Auburn was swept by Kentucky, so that would rule the Tigers out in a tiebreaker. And A&M and Kentucky didn't play, so that wouldn't come in head-to-head. But
Missouri can't catch Kentucky with 7, so right. A&M really doesn't matter if they finish to 11th or 12th, how they tiebreak with that. Once they eliminate Auburn and Missouri, then A&M, even if they tie with A&M and Auburn, which they could, but because they win, well, I guess in a 3-way tie, 11-19, 11-19, and 11-19, then you got to figure out how that all shakes out. So apparently the SEC knows something, that because in their road to Hoover, Kentucky has clinched a spot in the tournament, and they're tied with LSU. And if the standings, you look at the standings, LSU is 10th and Kentucky is 11th, but Kentucky is in the tournament and LSU is not, because LSU could still finish tied with Auburn and A&M. I guess in that scenario, Kentucky, LSU, Auburn, and A&M could all finish 11-19. I mean, that's very possible. Well, actually, yeah, no. Yeah, it is, because A&M could beat LSU and be 11-19. LSU's 11-19. Auburn sweeps Missouri, and Vandy sweeps Kentucky, and you got 4 teams that are 11-19. Then I'd have to get out the old protractor and everything, try to figure out how that shakes out. But that's possible at the 13, 12, 11, and 10, those 4 teams could all tie at 11-19, and that's very possible.
Do you need a brief break to go get a glass of water and some aspirin?
No, I'm okay right now. It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. That's why I get scared sometimes trying to start talking, because then you confuse yourself and you're like, no, that's not right. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And then if you're confused, you certainly know the people listening are confused, and they're like, well, this guy, he's what he's talking about. And sometimes you don't. I mean, sometimes it's guessing, and you're trying to do prognostications, and maybe thank God tomorrow the series actually starts and we can get into the series. And, by Thursday night, Friday night, we'll have a more clearer picture. We may be more cloudy Saturday morning when we wake up than we are this morning. And, God help us if we are, and it'd be good if we are, because that'll make for a heck of a Saturday in the SEC.
Yeah, and it could have been even more confusing had Mississippi State taken care of business last weekend as we expected. But we've had that conversation. One more thing before I move on. The 3-year or the 3-way tie you were talking about, that was 2011. That was Vanderbilt, Florida, and South Carolina. I want to say they all went 2-1 on the final weekend. I could be wrong. Maybe you're right. But in any case, those ended up being 3 of the final 4 teams in Omaha. And, of course, with it bracketing out that way, it was Florida that knocked out Vandy. So you might even say that, could have been the last 3 teams standing if you wanted to get technical about it, perhaps. But in any case, that was an epic year. And frankly, I think this one is shaping up much the same. I could see a scenario where you've got 3 of the last 4 in Omaha and maybe the title series being SEC teams pitting against each other. Barry, we're going to talk player of the year stuff and pitcher of the year stuff. I'm going to do some stuff with player of the year on the site today. And I'm going to spread out the content a little bit on the pod, and we'll talk about the hitters tomorrow, I think. But let's talk pitcher of the year. I posted my 14 power rankings yesterday, and we had this discussion off podcast yesterday, and I think you're right. I mean, I guess he could blow up this weekend and give up 10 earned runs, and it would change the the numbers or something like that. Not that that's probably going to happen. But you said you think Kevin Kopps is pretty much clinched pitcher of the year honors in the league. And I think that you might be right about that.
Yeah, if I were voting and I had to turn my ballot in today, or if I had to wait till the regular season ended on Saturday, I can't. I mean, I can't not give it to him. I mean, there's just he's too valuable, and I think Chris Burke helped me throw him over the top. I was pretty set on him being it anyway, but when you think, I mean, and nothing against Wicklander, nothing against Jack Leiter, nothing against Landon Marzeau, Kumar Rocker, Doug Mccasey. I mean, Ole Miss is 8-1 when Doug Mccasey starts in the SEC. That's pretty good. I mean, that's if he wins this week, they went 9-1 in his starts. Now he didn't win them all, but the team won. He did what he's supposed to do, and the team won. So I think he's got as much of an argument as anybody. But when you take into consideration, as Chris Burke said on the SEC Network the other day, when you get through with Jack Leiter on Saturday, good luck. You might see him again in the summer or the postseason or next year. You get rid of Kevin Kopps on Friday night, that dude's coming back on Sunday. And you've seen him one time, and you get him again on Sunday, and you still can't hit him. And there's not a lot of people that go multiple times in a weekend and face, one thing to come in and face, okay, well, he faced two guys Friday night, got the 2-out save, and he's out, and 7 guys didn't see him. I mean, there's instances on weekends where he faces guys 4 times, twice on Friday and twice on Saturday, and they still can't hit him. Now, Luke Lipscius jumps out from last weekend, who had an epic 15-pitch at bat Friday night against Kopps, and Kopps struck him out. And then he came up Sunday, and I think he hammered the first pitch in the right field corner for a double, and they ended up scoring a run and making it 3-2. But not a lot of people do that. And I mean, the guy's 9-0 overall. He's got 7 saves. He's got a 0.80 earned run average, which would lead the academic standards of the Delta Tau fraternity on Animal House. He would clearly be the valedictorian of that fraternity in a great movie. He's given up 5 runs, and he has 89 strikeouts in 56 innings, and he's given up 2 home runs. And he walks 2.2 per 9 innings, and he strikes out 14.2 per 9 innings overall. I don't see anything else nothing else jumps off. I mean, Leiter's got 119 strikeouts, 8-2, very good, 2.05 ERA, no hitter. Mccasey 7-2, 94 punch outs. Rocker's got 118 punch outs in 81 innings, 11-2. Lost the head-to-head battle with Mccasey. I mean, to me, it's a lot, and I hope somebody awards it to him, because I think he's been phenomenal, not just once a weekend, but twice a weekend. I hope people consider that, because what these other guys have done are tremendous, and they're certainly player of the year, pitcher of the year quality, but twice a weekend, multiple at bats against him, and you still can't produce. He still gets you out. That's to me is pitcher of the year, and that's where I think it goes to Kevin Kopps.
You have seen what I look at as I consider my rankings. I've got spreadsheets with hitters and pitchers, and I've broken them down in just about everything imaginable in the fly ball rates and home run rates and strikeout rates and stuff like that. And one of the other things I look at that I don't think ever gets discussed enough, but I think it should be, is just runs allowed. Earned run average is I think what a pitcher is ultimately judged by. And I'm not saying that's totally invalid, but you've seen a spot where a pitcher goes an inning and he gives up 8 runs and one of them's unearned because somebody booted a ball or missed a pickoff throw, and the rules state that if about the 3rd out when it would have been made, that sort of thing. And so sometimes a pitcher gets charged with runs that aren't earned, but the truth is that it was his responsibility to keep it together and not come unglued, and sometimes you see guys that don't do a good job of that. So in addition to earn runs, I look at unearned runs too. Cops has given up 5 runs all year. All of them have been earned. I look across all the metrics. He's getting ground balls at a 23% rate, which is pretty high. He's striking out hitters at a 42% rate, which is really high. He's only issuing a walk or hit batsman 7% of the time. That's outstanding. Base runners per innings pitched, 0.84. Batting average on balls in play, 287 against him. So he's not like seeing an inordinate amount of line drives that are finding pitchers' mitts or catchers' mitts, I guess, or fielders' mitts is a good way to put it. As far as I can tell, there's a component ERA as a stat I look at a lot. It's like taking all of your base runners that you give up and saying, typically, what is that for a pitcher? His component ERA is 1.26 compared to his real one of 0.80. So it's not like he's straining an inordinate amount of runners or anything like that. Point I'm making is, and oh, by the way, SEC innings, 46 2/3 and a 0.58 ERA. It's not just that Kevin Kopps is performing, but it's the fact that there's not really any noise at all in the numbers. Everything that you look at as you dive deep into things suggests he's legit. Oh, by the way, if you like traditional stuff, 9-0 record, 7 saves. There's that too.
And I like that you brought that up about the earned runs, because earned run average can be deceiving. There can be times where a pitcher pitches and they don't play defense for him. I mean, it's just, there's things that are weird. Well, he's 1-7, but he's only got a 1.9 ERA. How's that? Well, we filled 859 when he pitches because we can't get anybody out, and he's given up like 78 unearned runs. And I mean, so that is a huge thing. But Kopps has given up, you mentioned, 5 runs all season long. The next closest person to him in Power 5, and I'm not counting some of these others, but the next closest person to him in the NCAA and Power 5 runs allowed is Oklahoma State's Parker Scott. And he's given up 14, which is 9 more runs allowed in 8 less innings than Kevin Kopps.
Yeah.
And then next on the list, we'll stop at 3, but next on the list for most runs allowed by a Power 5 pitcher, just lost him, from Texas, is Pete Hanson from Texas. And he's given up 15 runs in 64 innings. And that's 10 more. That's triple the number that Kevin Kopps has allowed. So your 3 best pitchers in the Power 5 in terms of runs allowed this season are Kevin Kopps with 5, and then the next 2 guys are 14 and 15. And then it starts climbing the ladder pretty quick after that. Wicklander's in there at 16. There's a kid at Notre Dame in there, Tanner Colip. He's given up 16 runs. So more evidence to support Kevin Kopps' candidacy as SEC Pitcher of the Year.
Well, if you want to compare him, because this is sort of the year of the super reliever in the SEC, there's 7 or 8 guys that have had really, really good seasons, and a few of them I would classify as outstanding. The 2 closest pitchers in his own league to him, Landon Sims at Mississippi State, who has been dominant in his own right. In fact, pitch for pitch, he's probably been even more dominant than Kopps. He's given up 2 runs, both earned, but he's only thrown 34 innings, quote unquote, only. That's in comparison to Kopps. 34 is a pretty good number for a reliever, but Kopps, again, just out of this world. He's thrown 56 1/3. Nick Maldonado at Vanderbilt, the other good comp there. Maldonado's given up 4 runs, all earned, 31 1/3 innings pitched. Maldonado and Sims are actually giving up fewer runs per inning, or fewer base runners per inning. Kopps is at 0.84, Maldonado 0.71. And Sims 0.68. But again, Kopps is going longer into games, which I would think would affect your stamina. You might issue another free pass there, where other guys wouldn't as you throw more innings. So I don't hold that against him. Christian Scott at Florida, another guy who's had a really nice season. He's given up 14 runs in 48 innings. So he hasn't been as effective, but he's more towards the Kopps end in terms of usage. If you compare Kopps to the top of the league, Jack Leiter who I've got as my number 2 this week, has thrown 15 more innings than Cops, but he's given up 15 more runs if you include unearned runs, and he's given up 11 more unearned runs. So again, I think the difference between the two there clear. I've got Kumar Rocker, one spot behind Leiter this week. Rocker has thrown an additional 25 innings over and beyond Cops, but he's given up 20 runs in just terms of all runs, earned and unearned, and Rocker's given up 17 more runs. So again, you can kind of slice this any way you want. And Rocker and Leiter are outstanding, and I think any college coach would love to have them maybe above and beyond 2 other starters in the country. But if you look at performance and what they've done, Cops, I think, should be your clear winner for pitcher of the year.
And before my Mississippi State friends get mad at me, I didn't leave out Landon Sims on purpose. When I'm reading the NCAA stats, there are stat minimums.
He doesn't qualify, does he?
He doesn't qualify. Those are stat minimums created by the NCAA, and they've been the same since I started doing this in 1985. You have to throw 1 inning per every game your team pitches. If you play 82 games, you have to have 82 innings. If you throw 81.2 innings, you don't count. So I just want to make sure they don't get mad at me. I didn't leave him out, and the NCAA is not cheating him, but he doesn't have the innings to qualify, and that's why he doesn't show up in the SEC statistics either, because he doesn't have the 1 inning per team game to qualify. And most of the time they use him for 1 inning, and sometimes they don't use him at all. And if you don't pitch a lot, then it kind of messes things up a little bit. And so that's why I didn't mention that he had given up the 2 runs and all, and I was not leaving him out. But he does not meet the league minimums or the NCAA minimums at this point.
And if anybody's wondering about Doug Mccasey, why we might not have him in the top 3, Mccasey's thrown 65 and 30 innings. He missed some time at the first of the year. So again, I think you have to consider that when you're ranking all pitchers. Frankly, arms get tired the more innings you throw, which frankly, that makes what Landon Marceau at LSU has done really special. Marceau hasn't been as dominant as those guys, but my goodness, I mean, I think I looked, and I think he's thrown at least 6 innings in every start this year, and I don't know that anybody else in the league can say that, Barry.
Oh, I don't think so either. He missed 2 games in the non-conference, and he's missed a start in the SEC, right? Didn't he miss? He missed the LSU series also.
You talking about Mccasey?
Mccasey.
He missed 1 conference series, and he did miss a lot of non-conference. And just to clarify, yeah, Marceau was who I was talking about at last. Marceau, I don't think has missed any starts, and I think he's gone 6 in every one.
Yeah, he's been there too. And I was thinking Mccasey, and we mentioned that Ole Miss is 8, and well, he didn't start 1 SEC game, so he would be 7-1 in his 8 SEC starts. But yeah, Marceau's been really good. 6-4 record, and I think he's been there just about every weekend for them. He's been there every weekend for them in the rotation. 13 games, 13 starts, and yeah, I would call up his stats here, look at him real quick, but I would bet that he has. I bet he has answered the bell at least 6 innings in just about every start for them this year, and has pitched tremendously well for LSU, and then having to assume the number 1 position because of the loss to Jaden Hill, which further puts pressure on him, and he still continued to strive in those conditions for LSU, and also pitching for a team that hasn't won a ton of games either, and has still been really, really good each and every time out.
Barry, we spent a lot of time on pitching today. Again, we'll get to hitting tomorrow, and I'll sort that out throughout the day and have some interesting things to bring to the podcast tomorrow. But anything else? Oh, I know what we got. We got Spencer Turnbull threw a no-hitter last night in Major League Baseball. That's relevant, of course, because Turnbull threw to Alabama not too long ago.
Yeah, it's a really good guy. Had a good career here at Alabama, from Alabama. From Demopolis. His mother and dad both went to school here at Alabama. From the best I could tell, he's just the 6th different SEC pitcher to be involved in a no-hitter in the major leagues. but only the second complete game no-hitter, joining Seattle's James Paxton, who pitched at Kentucky in 2018 when the Mariners had a no-hitter in the 2018 season. Walker Buehler in 2018, a Vanderbilt alum, had a 6 innings and a 9-inning no-hitter for the Dodgers. And then Greg Olson, who played at Auburn, and Charlie Furbush, who played at LSU, and Jonathan Papelbon, who played at Mississippi State, all had parts of no-hitters in 1991, 2012, and 2014 as SEC guys who have been a part of no-hitters. You know, Turnbull's had a really interesting career. I think he was 3-17 2 years ago for the god-awful Tigers of Detroit. Pitched well, just one of those guys that couldn't win because he played for a bad team. And he's kind of, you know, had a decent year last year in the COVID year and has had, you know, gotten off to a really good start this year. Pitched extremely well. I'm still counting Madison Bumgarner's no-hitter in the 7 innings, even though Major League Baseball refuses to do it. But the 6 no-hitter in Major League Baseball this year, the second player that I could find from the state of Alabama to throw a no-hitter, Virgil Trucks, had 2 no-hitters for the Detroit Tigers. So all 3 no-hitters pitched by Alabama natives in Major League Baseball history have all come for the Detroit Tigers. Virgil Trucks did it twice. And just it's kind of an unusual year, you know, as far as no-hitters go and different things. But, you know, 6 in the major leagues this early in the season is a really high number. I'll ask you this question. I wouldn't get it right. I wouldn't even be close, but you can just do Division I's if you want to, or you can do all of college baseball, which includes JUCOs and NAIAs. But either you guys want to take a stab at how many no-hitters we've had in college baseball this year?
You know, I feel like there were 8 or 9 early on. So I'm going to say I'm not even going to bother to guess outside of Division One because
you're not close.
Well, I mean, I'm going to guess that I'm already defeated. I haven't even guessed. I'm going to say maybe 15 in Division One.
That's better.
Okay.
There have been 27 Division I no-hitters this year.
Oh goodness.
And
now, how many of those are by one guy?
None of them. They're all by different. Nobody's thrown multiple no-hitters. Now, teams.
No. I mean, how many of them are a pitcher throwing a complete game?
I could scan through real quick. Probably maybe half, if I had to guess. I could scan through my list real quick and give you that. But I know Illinois and Kansas have both had the dubious extinction of throwing a no-hitter and being no-hit. We talked about the Kansas pitcher yesterday a little bit that threw a no-hit, was no-hit last week and then came back and threw a no-hitter this week against Kansas State. One thing you do and look at this too, a lot of these are 7-inning games, like the Kansas no-hitter this weekend was 7 innings. So a lot of them are 7-inning games that they're allowed to play. Probably 9-inning, one guy no-hitters. You know, there's probably not going to fill up a hand if you counted, you know, that. But interesting to see that, you know, how many different teams have, you know, been involved in no-hitters. And for the record, the total number of college baseball this year is 88, if you count D2s and D3s and NAIA and the junior colleges. So a lot of those, but not many 9-inning single guy complete game no hitters out there, because a lot of these leagues like D2s and 3s, I don't know that they play any 9-inning games at all. I think they go on the weekends and play double headers, and you play 7-inning games. But still good accomplishments. But proud for Spencer. I knew him when he was here, and knew his mom and dad. When he was here, so happy to see him develop and play really well and be able to accomplish that last night for the Tigers against the Mariners. And interesting that the 2 SEC guys with complete game no hitters, one was for the Mariners and the other one was against the Mariners. So that's kind of fun little nugget too. So
No
Enough
hitters involving.
nonsense.
No, that's okay.
Enough of the nonsense there.
I think Jack Leiter is the only player in the SEC who's thrown a complete game no-hitter this year, correct?
Correct. I think there have only been just the 2 SEC no-hitters, right?
That and the combined Mississippi State thing back in February?
State
Yeah. Which I think Landon Sims was in on, right?
I think Landon Sims was in on that as well, yes.
He had to be. Of course. Landon Sims is in on anything that's a good bullpen effort there.
Absolutely.
And with that, we'll close the show today. Thanks to Barry Allen for joining me, as he usually does during baseball season. I'm your host, Chris Lee, reminding you, check out our website, southeastern14.com. All our content there is free. Check out our podcast, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get those. That helps us out, helps us get found, all those sorts of things. Anyway, thank you for listening to the Wednesday edition of the Southeastern 14 podcast. We will be back on Thursday with another one.